All right, let's see if we can get the clicker to work first off. All right, guys, welcome. Welcome to a rocky 2023. It may not sound that fun, but with 91% of cybersecurity experts, business analysts reporting that this year we are most likely to experience a catastrophic cybersecurity event. It might make you pause, but what we really need to be thinking about and asking ourselves is, what does that mean? What does that mean for me as a cybersecurity expert? What does that mean for my industry? But also the big question of, am I ready? Before you can answer any of these questions, then we need to understand the landscape. What is happening in the world of 2023 that is making it such a tumultuous year? Well, let me tell you. It's technological advancements. It's geopolitical hotspots that are causing uncertainty around the world. It's things that are causing an increase in willingness for cybersecurity attacks to take place, not just for the sake of disruption. Sometimes it's for political influence, data exfiltration, my mic is losing you, and actual destruction. When we think about these motivations, we have to understand how it's going to influence us and what does that mean. So as we move on, let's kind of take a look of what this means. So with the advancements of technology, what we are experiencing is a rapid increase in technology like we've never seen, making the last decade look like child's play with advancements. Second, we already mentioned the geopolitical hotspots around the world. It is not just one or two or three regions, but it's allies that are coming together like we've never seen before, again, increasing that willingness to conduct or execute a cybersecurity attack. So what does this mean for us? Combined, that means that attacks are increasing in sophistication rapidly. That means the motivations are changing. The influencers are changing. So what does this mean? Whoops, my confidence slides weren't moving. So what does this mean for us as far as technological advancements? Let's go ahead and dive in. So the first one, AI and machine learning. I know that there's been a lot of chatter, and probably the first thing that comes to mind is ChatGPT. Pun kind of intended there. ChatGPT is actually allowing hackers to modify their code and develop code in real time. What that is doing, it's actually lowering the cost of operations. Hackers don't have to be as skilled. They can jump into ChatGPT and say, this is what I am trying to do. This, meaning perhaps subvert a PLC. I want to create a phishing campaign. So what it is actually doing is enabling hackers to create and retool very, very quickly. Let's move forward. As it relates to quantum computing, the first thing that comes to mind might be two robots fighting. It's not quite that. What this looks like in quantum computing, and you also might think to yourself, well, this isn't quite commercialized yet. Well, there are major investments happening within the world of quantum computing that's going to move the modern breakthroughs forward, and most likely within this year. And what does this mean for us? What it means with the world of quantum computing is we're going to see major encryption be broken by quantum computing. What we're going to have to see and how we're going to have to adapt as security professionals is see this post-era quantum computing decryption and encryption. So then they almost move and play and work together to counter the other. What I also want to recognize here, which we are way too familiar, is with an advancements of technology, the regulation doesn't catch up. So we as security professionals, our responsibility is going to ensure that there is collaboration not just within ourselves, but also with government entities to ensure the regulation is coming up with the technology. It's applicable, it's understandable, and it can actually be applied in the environments that we work in. Next one, Internet of Things. Obviously, we are living in the world of Internet of Things as OT professionals working in the world of ICS. So we see the environment growing rapidly. We see the attack surface growing. We get frustrated with vendors because the IoT devices aren't quite as hardened where we would like or what we're not used to. But what we're also not thinking about with IoT devices is the basics of an AC sensor. What is its direct impact? What could happen if an AC sensor was compromised? Well, let's walk through that. So let's say that there's two types of attacks happening. One is at the plant level to actually change or speed up a turbine. Your AC sensor is going to say, hey, it's getting kind of hot in here. We need to go ahead and cool this down. Well, if I, as an attacker, say, no, I'm going to turn this off, or I'm going to leave it at what is a respectable range of a temperature, we will never know an attack is happening. So it's a small vector, something that we don't even think about as being perhaps important, has massive catastrophic implications if we're not thinking about the security hardening. So for devices that are causing problems already within an environment and an ecosystem that is already hard to track, manage, update, patch, we have to be thinking about our IoT devices as well and that relationship with our vendors. Augmented reality and virtual reality. You're probably like, why the hell is this even relevant at an OT conference? Well, let's talk about it. It's not just your children using these devices. COVID-19 expedited the way that we use AR, the way that we use VR. One example, and that I was able to be a part of, which was pretty cool, at least I thought, was there was a group of operators that had to stay in the plant for weeks. We've all seen this, we all heard about it. These individuals didn't know everything about the plant. If something broke, you couldn't bring someone in. So what we were able to do is actually send them a headset that allowed an operator to sit next to them, see what they see in real time. They were also able to see PDFs of instructions and say, okay, I know what to do, I can walk through this, I feel confident because I have someone with me. So how do you use it for bad? That is the question that we, as security experts who interact with this technology and allow it in our environment, have to ask ourselves. With AR or VR, the intention could be purely to understand and learn operations. It can understand what is in this plant, what are they interacting with, who is interacting with it. People are the weakest link. If I find Bob, because he's going to be wearing his employee name badge, I'm going to find Bob, and I'm going to send Bob a phishing email. Or what if I want to do something more destructive? I can change in real time if I had access to that PDF or whatever protocols or whatever information was being sent to that user and say, hey, execute step Y. And it could be a simple change of attention that could cause major downstream impacts. So we have to be thinking about maybe the technology does impact me and think about how. Talk to your operators and say, hey, how are you using this? Are you using this? The next one, robotics. I'm going to just touch on this one shortly, and the reason why I'm bringing it up without connection to IoT is because of how mainstream robotics is becoming. And again, thinking about what that downstream impact is and how these robotics can be manipulated, and we need to think about them very specifically. The last one here is going to be automation and then autonomous machines. Let's remove the word machines for a little bit. Let's think about autonomous substations. Let's talk about autonomous vehicles. Let's talk about an autonomous McDonald's. Have you guys seen this? You can raise your hand, I can see you. It's the weirdest thing I've ever seen in my life. But could you imagine dying from a Big Mac? And I don't mean cholesterol, I mean the autonomous building that cleans its floor, that throws ketchup on a burger with hopefully pickles and lots of onions, saying, well, We don't need ketchup today. You just need a little bit of Clorox, and you're going to throw the ketchup on the floor and clean the floor. It might be a really bad day for whoever is picking up that Big Mac. So what we need to do is put our dark thinking hats on. What is the end goal? What can be achieved through these different types of technologies? And I apologize, I forgot to put balloons on this. Also a joke. So what we've done is talked about the tools. We've talked about the tools within our environment that we use that is enabling hackers to work at rapid paces. We have talked about tools that are going to fight for us, against us. Let's talk about the landscape and who these people are. What are their motivations? What's the world like right now? So, I assume a lot of you are from the US. This is my home and the nation that I love. But it's unfortunate. We are experiencing a drastic increase in domestic violence, extremism, and what this is causing is an increase in willingness to execute attacks. While the example I'm going to provide is a physical attack, then it's the motivation is what we have to remember is important. So North Carolina, we all know about this attack, right? So it was an extremist organization that actually physically targeted a substation and created a blackout across North Carolina. The motivation behind this attack was purely because a social event had taken place that this organization had disagreed with. So they wanted to cause and create havoc and people to experience pain so that these types of events wouldn't happen again. What we also need to, what I didn't put on this slide is Mexico, but it should be on here, especially with the increase in violence from the cartels. While we haven't seen direct attacks in the cyberspace, then naturally we are seeing an increase in those physical attacks. The next location I want to talk about, or region, is going to be Eastern Asia. So this is going to be China, Taiwan, and North Korea. China's been on the list for a long time. You all know this, I don't have to tell you, but they're damn good at stealing stuff, whether that be IP or money. But what about even just sleeping in our networks? Something that we have to think about. If we know that they can steal information and they are a power player that's brokering relationships across the globe, then we have to be very mindful of this region. Not just that, but between North Korea becoming more of an ally with China, then they're being emboldened. They're being emboldened like never before. I mean, it's North Korea, it's this big. I hope I didn't hurt anybody's feelings. But North Korea, with their desire to be a superpower, with their desire for nuclear proliferation, they're being emboldened like never before, and they love cybercrime. And they're testing that out in areas of Taiwan, which is creating an entire tension in the region. The next is the Middle East. And obviously, this region has suffered instability for decades. And I hate to point out to my friends in the third row, but I have to talk about Israel and Iran. Israel and Iran are engaged actively every single day, monthly, weekly, on cyber attacks that could and are likely to spill over into our corporations, our industries, and within society. So we need to focus on what they're doing, what are their tactics, and the techniques, and learn from them. Within Eastern Europe and the Balkans, you knew I was going to get to it, the Russia-Ukraine war. Naturally, this is causing disruption across the entire globe. But what it's also showing us is that cyberspace is the new frontier of warfare. Cybersecurity experts, professors are studying this. Why? Because in the modern era, we haven't seen a war like this. They've been much more on the ground and tactical. So new technologies are being tested right now in this region against Ukraine and the allied countries. What we're also seeing in a direct example I'll provide here is the shutdown of government agency websites. And that was really a distraction type of attack. That wasn't because of the government agencies, but they were trying to figure out, okay, what is going to be the next movement? So it created confusion of what was going to happen. And while majority of the attacks in Ukraine's critical infrastructure have been physical, there has certainly been evidence that there has been attempts to subvert those systems via cyberspace. Now, moving on, we've talked about influence, which is so, so important right now for economic reasons, for stability. But when we talk about North Africa and Southern Africa, this is really a play from China and Russia. What they are doing in an area that has been hit with economic hardship for a very long time, it has a lot of political instability. What is happening is they're using or exploiting this opportunity for them to become buddies. And so they are heavily financially investing into this region. And so what we're seeing with this heavy investment, this rapid investment, is the increase in terrorist organizations and the growth of those organizations and a sophistication. So when you think about Northern and Southern Africa, you might be like, well, yeah, I got the email saying that I'm talking to Elon Musk, or I'm getting married to a Nigerian prince. It's not happening. But those attacks and types of attacks are going to increase, and they're going to be much more sophisticated than what we're seeing, and it's purely going to be on the behalf of China and Russia. Last one here. So India and Pakistan. The reason why I bring this up is because they're a little bit of disruption between themselves. They are in an arms race right now to develop nuclear weapons. And so what we're seeing is tension rising as each one is afraid that the other is going to deploy it faster than the other. A good example, and we probably have all heard about it or seen it or interacted with it, was Sidewinder. Sidewinder was an attack against Pakistan, and we saw 1,000 attacks alone by this organization. And they targeted military, government entities for the purpose of theft, political influence, and just straight data exfiltration. So I just want to assure you, as I've listed the last one, you are safe. Everything is okay. This is not therapy, but take a deep breath. Again, we're safe unless you have your Bluetooth on. And with that being said, let's talk about a little bit what we've just said. We know the tactics. We know the battleground. Let's talk about how. What are those tactics going to look like from an operational perspective? What are the attacks going to look like? Not on your Bluetooth, okay? All right. So obviously the most common that we're seeing, ransomware. We've already talked about how modern technology is going to make this much easier. They're going to be able to throw into ChatGPT and say, hey, write me a line of code, and be able to change and reconfigure that piece of code quicker than you are going to be able to retool. The next, and I'm going to quickly go over these. I think that you know majority of them. All right. Advanced persistent threats. This is where our cyber criminals sit, right? And so with the amount of crime, the amount of allies, the amount of money that war needs, the transfer of information, and the amount of data that countries are looking to get, this is where those types of threats are going to be. These are going to be like the example that I made of perhaps a sleeper agent in our OT environments. That's what we're talking about, the level of sophistication, and we need to remember that. These are not individuals in hoodies in our parents' basements. These are large organizations that are out in the middle of the public. You may see a skyscraper, and they're going to be headquarters there. They're going to have HR. They're going to coordinate and communicate and have an enterprise and be highly funded. IoT attacks. We've talked about this. With this space increasing, and the attack surface becoming much broader in the IoT space, with these devices being thrown into environments like ours, then these devices provide a sweet spot. Easy access can create a lot of damage. Supply chain attacks. We know this as we have more vendors in our environment, whether that be from the IoT space or perhaps maybe it's just to get cellular service like Verizon. What we are doing is increasing access to our environment. We're increasing the number of people within our environment. People we know are the weakest link within the world of cybersecurity. It's the unfortunate reality. But to subvert a person is easier than a business process. It's easier to subvert an individual than it is quantum computing. So when we think about supply chain attacks, then it's going to be very, very targeted. And so I'm just going to throw this out here because of the fact that some organizations and vendors were here today. Maybe go talk with them. Cloud attacks. Now, again, you might not think about the OT space and this being relevant to us, but you have cloud infrastructure. Your vendors probably have cloud infrastructure. When we talk about the Colonial Pipeline, we all know that that wasn't in the OT space, but that was in the IT space. So we need to think about pathways. We also need to think about when we are creating our cloud environments and when we do move our OT systems to the cloud environment, that we're not adopting the same bad security hygiene as it was in on-prem. So next one. Last one is going to be that AI-based attack. And these are going to be sophisticated, kind of maybe motivated by our cyber criminals. But the reason why I talk about the AI-based attack is this is where you're going to see live interaction. You're going to see attacks that are actually going to be able to subvert your EDRs in real time, and they're going to be able to learn. They're going to be being able to learn while you're in your environment to actually be sparring and perhaps not even get detected. All right, so now we've done all three. Are we panicking? Or are you saying, well, this is my job as a security professional. This is what I deal with every single day. Or are you saying, well, crap, now what? I'm not really sure what to do. I've known technology is evolving. I know that there's threats, but I don't really know what to do. I'm just going to keep going and just do my job. No. We, as security professionals, have to be prepared. Prepared, though, we need to think about this differently. So when we think about general preparedness, you're like, yeah, that's incident response. That is, us doing our tabletop exercises every year. No. And it's not also just visibility. It's not us saying that, hey, we have to know everything in our environment. We as security professionals have to rethink about security and say, if I'm in the OT space and I care about my space and I know that I can still drop a pin through my stack, we're not preventing. The long-term goal for us, as security professionals, we know you can't prevent every single attack. You can't fight against every single attack. Our job is to reduce the amount of time that an attacker is in our environment, to slow them down to allow our EDR tools to work, to slow them down so that when we do respond, they're not there to already executing on their main objective. So when we talk about being prepared and preparing our security teams, we have to start thinking about prevention. And this is a challenge to you. This is a challenge to our vendors to ensure that we are actually preventing cyber attacks versus just looking at them. What does that mean for traditional program? So I'm not going to go through all of these bullets. This is something that you all should be very familiar with. So this slide and the next one is just a basic high-level overview of what a program should look like. And what we should be doing is taking business intelligence, threat intelligence, and applying it across our programs. How can each one of these elements prevent, counter, or provide my business insights to an attack? Obviously, you start with your strategy. What we already recognized, that educating our teams is the most important because they're the weakest link. And that's not just you as a security professional, that's HR, that's marketing, that might even be the janitorial staff. All who are susceptible to attacks and need to be thinking about prevention. The last one I'm going to mention here, and this one may make vendors mad, but it's right-sizing your toolkit. Too often in the market, we throw out buzz terms to ensure that we're being different. We're doing something different. But we're not here to create confusion. We are here as cybersecurity professionals and advocates of our space to ensure that something destructive doesn't happen. So when I talk about right-sizing your toolkit, that doesn't mean adapting and adopting every new piece of technology. That means what is right for your environment? What is my security posture? Where are my gaps? What do I need? The last ones I'm going to hit on here is going to be, because I'm going to run out of time, is going to be monitoring that geopolitical atmosphere. You might say, well, this is what I do with CISA. Might be what I do through other intelligent briefings, but who does that information go to? The importance of knowing this information is to ensure that you're constantly adapting. You know when those threats are coming. You know when there's going to be peak times. And so it's critical that that information is a downstream impact and gets to everyone across your organization. And so again, I told you this is a program. This is linear. And it could wash and repeat. And you need to go back and update your strategy. But as we talk about that development and establishment of a program, it's also a culture. You know, we use this word security, but we also use the word safety. When you talk about, though, buying something for the sake of safety, it's probably going to get invested in. When you talk about the world security, then it's an insurance policy. And we don't want to invest in insurance policies. But I'm pretty sure that we've talked about the impact of the loss of life. And so we need to be talking about security in the way that it makes us safer, and that being a part of our overall culture of our organization, whether that be our security teams or the organization as a whole. So lastly, my takeaway for you all is really that we have to constantly learn. We have to constantly adapt. We have to understand where our gaps are in our own thinking about security, leveraging outside perspectives and thinking about what does prevention look like. Technology is both an enabler and something that scares us, but we cannot fear it. We have to adapt to it and continue to prevent the catastrophic events that could happen over the year of 2023. Thank you all.